I haven't made any decisions about my future except that I'm going to be spending a lot more time with Chasten and the kids. There's lots of possibilities. People have lots of ideas.
That was former mayor of South Bend, Indiana, presidential hopeful and transportation secretary Pete Buttigieg last month, who says he's taking a serious look now at running for the United States Senate in his new home state of Michigan. Buttigieg is, quote, exploring all his options, according to a source close to him. A seat opened up today in the battleground state after Democratic Senator Gary Peters announced he wouldn't seek re-election in 2026. Nikole Killion joins us now from Capitol Hill. She's among those who has to track people like Gary Peters and the possibility of a Pete Buttigieg campaign. So, Nikole, let's walk through this. What challenges could the former mayor and transportation secretary face should he decide to jump into this race?
Well, if anything, obviously, he does not necessarily have roots in Michigan, although his husband lives there. And so from that standpoint, obviously, many know him as the former mayor of South Bend, Indiana. So, in terms of just from a geographic standpoint, while, yes, that's close to Michigan, it could raise some questions or eyebrows. But that being said, as long as he is a resident of the state and lives there ahead of this run, it's certainly possible for him to run. But I think, if anything, it depends on who else potentially might get into this race. Obviously, it could be a wide open field. We saw a lot of competition, certainly, for the seat that was vacated by Debbie Stabenow. So unclear at this point who else may jump in. Governor Gretchen Whitmer, as of now, has ruled out a potential run, but there are certainly many other potential possibilities. And of course, also it depends who gets in on the Republican side as well. There's been some talk potentially of Congressman John James, who may potentially be interested in the seat. So there are a lot of options and possibilities. Still, this race is a long way out, but already getting started as Gary Peters announced that he would no longer seek re-election.
It'll be one to watch, and it will get credit on the Democratic side for sure. Let's head down to Georgia, where the NRSC, or the organization that recruits Republicans to run for the Senate, is now courting the Georgia governor, Brian Kemp, to run for the Senate there in 2026 against the Democratic Senator John Ossoff. Why would Republicans want Governor Kemp to run, especially given his colored past with President Trump?
Well, they want to flip the seat, plain and simple, and certainly we saw President Trump flip the state of Georgia, of course, after President Biden won the state after some 3 decades, and of course that ultimately that kind of momentum led to people like John Ossoff and Senator Warnock being elected from the state of Georgia. But there's certainly a sentiment there in the Peach State that Georgia is still a red state, and so many Republicans in that state would like to see it flip back. Not to mention that Governor Kemp, of course, is quite popular in this state. And has a pretty strong track record among constituents there. So he is certainly a target and somebody who has been talked about for some time now about a potential Senate run. But certainly now that Tim Scott is in charge, this is the time to be, plotting strategy and recruiting candidates because, again, 2026 is just around the corner.
And it takes a lot of money. Real quick, there are a pair of special primaries today in Florida to replace now former Congressman Matt Gaetz, who, of course, quit Congress, and Mike Waltz, who's now the national security advisor. What are we looking for in those races?
Well, basically, we just want to see who ultimately ends up succeeding these members of Congress, of course. So we saw Matt Gaetz resign from his position amid some controversy, of course, as he was briefly named as Attorney General nominee for President Trump, only to withdraw a couple of days later. Of course, when he was named to that post ever so briefly, he then resigned from his seat. And of course, that was pending a congressional ethics investigation as well. So this is a very crowded field in terms of his particular race in the first congressional district down there in Florida in the Panhandle. In fact, one of his former opponents, Aaron Dimmick, is one of those running. But right now, the favored candidate appears to be Jimmy Patronis, who has been endorsed not only by Gaetz, but also President Trump. There's also a special election happening down in Florida to replace Congressman Mike Waltz, who, as you know, has been tapped to head up the national security team for President Trump as one of his top advisors. So we will see who fill those slots, but certainly they will be critical to keep in Republican hands, since we know the majority will be quite narrow in the House. So if anything, that's probably what Speaker Johnson is watching for going forward, Ed.
Our executive producer, Ali Sanza, had me look this up, Nikole. 643 days left until election night 2026. for those of you keeping score at home. Nikole, thank you as always.
Well, we
Good
know
to see
you've
you.
got your whiteboard, Ed.
We'll bring it out.